What's up, ILDECA? It's James Rosenberger, your ILDECA social media team YouTube manager, here for a special video in honor of this month and the history, triumphs, and successes it explores. Since March 1st, if any of you did not know, it has been National Women's History Month, and in honor of the month itself, I thought it would be only fitting for us to explore some of the most impactful women in business throughout the history of the United States before this month formally comes to a close. Now, before we begin, I'd like to preface that there's an overwhelming possibility that I have left out some very important women in this video. And whether this is because my list will only cover 10 names or because I overlooked an important figure in my research, please feel free to remind me of them in the comments and share a bit about why they've been so impactful, since your insight will definitely only add value to this month and educate all of us further about the role powerful women have served in the business community in the history of our country. Well, without further ado, let's begin with our exploration of the history of some of the most impactful women in business in honor of this year's National Women's History Month. Before we dive straight into some names, I think we would all benefit from a reflection of all the societal barriers, discrimination, and inequities these women and countless more had to supersede in order to even enter the world of business. It may be more common today to see both men and women thrive in this field, yet this was obviously not always the case, and many positional and pay-related inequalities still exist today between men and women. Historically, women, societally confined to their own, quote, separate sphere, used to only be valued for their roles in a domestic setting, cooking and caring for children, you know the sorts. Part of a prevailing, quote, cult of domesticity, women were not the only victims of the asphyxiating superiority complex among white males in America. Even during the 20th century, after women had gained the right to vote, they were only valued during times of extreme male labor shortages, temporarily treated with greater equity to fill up the factories, for example, and when women themselves were in need, such as during the Depression era. Occupational aid and subsidies were retracted and consequently nowhere to be found. Yet, during most of our history, with no historical opportunities within workers' unions, occupations outside of textiles or domestic servantry, and with no political freedoms to even vote or even express their opinions, women still manage to fight through these barriers and strive for an idea of equity that is nearing realization as time pushes onward. So let's get into it. For example, two of these pioneers of women's involvement in business were Eliza Pickney and Mary Katherine Goddard, both living during the general oppression of the 18th century in America. Pickney, for starters, was in her youth the owner, because of the death of her mother and involvement of her father in the West Indies, of 3 plantations in Charlestown, South Carolina. Taking advantage of the growing textile industry in the 18th century, Pickney did not sit complacently and rather began production of a novel, high-quality indigo dye in 1739, soon to find commercial success among an international market as a leading export cash crop in the United States during this time. Thus, by revolutionizing the early textile industry, Pickney represents an important woman in a business field dominated by men, and as such was later recognized by being the first woman inducted into the South Carolina Business Hall of Fame during 1989. Goddard, by contrast, was a highly influential Baltimore publisher or printer, most well known for her status as the first woman postmaster in the history of the colonial United States. Most notably, Goddard served as Baltimore's only printer during the Revolutionary War. And she was even known for printing the first copy of the Declaration of the United States that included all the signers' names within the document itself. Thus, both of these figures represented a challenge to the existing status quo in the United States, or within colonial America, through their influential work within their respective fields of business. However, many more important women remain. For example, we can talk about Lydia Pinkham, whose herbal compounds for medicinal use pioneered the prioritization of women's health during the 19th century, a time when women's health was not always emphasized among the general population. Additionally, Pinkham had to effectively market her product among an unforgiving market, and her impact can be demonstrated by the fact that even today, her products can be seen in stores. Continuing along the list, we can observe Madam C.J. Walker, whose position as an African-American orphan in the late 19th and early 20th century brought forth valuable entrepreneurial progress for this marginalized group during this time. Specifically, Walker was known for her, quote, wonderful hair grower, which was marketed internationally, which came from her own passion for hair treatment from her own personal hair loss. And she was also well known for orchestrating one of the first national business union meetings among women in the United States. Continuing along the list of impactful women, rather businesswomen over time, we can find recognizable figures such as Coco Chanel, whose business, pulling in an estimated $160 million per year by the time of her death, which is incredible for the time, expanded from a simple hat shop to that famous cosmetics and perfume industry that we know today by the end of her work. We could also reference figures such as Olive Ann Beach, who co-founded the Beach Aircraft Corporation, and with it employed over 10,000 employees during the Depression era, which is remarkable. At the same time, Beach Corporation helped to produce valuable aviation technology during World War II. And after 1950, when her husband had died, of course, Beach served as the CEO of her company, transitioning Beach Corporation to maintaining considerable value for around 20 years, later serving on the board of directors before her retirement. Now, transitioning into a more contemporary look at impactful businesswomen during this time, one example could be Katherine Graham, the famous 20th century CEO of the Washington Post, whose work novel not only because of her position as the first woman CEO of a Fortune 500 company, but also because of the importance of her work, publishing works such as Watergate and the Pentagon Papers. She also was notable because of her supersession of the inferiority complexes that she had to overcome. Initially, she felt restricted as a woman in her society and was treated as if her opinion didn't matter in her own company despite being the owner. She helped build up the Washington Post to reflect the large publishing corporation it is today. And her work is reflected in the Washington Post's popularity now. Next, we could take a look at perhaps the most recognizable woman named thus far, Oprah Winfrey. To name a few of her meaningful accomplishments in the business world, we could reference her powerful success, rising from childhood poverty and dysfunction, as the host and producer of the well-known Oprah Winfrey Show. Or, for example, one can note the millions of dollars of nonprofit revenue Oprah has created to help others around the world through her inspiring work, which still has an impact today in the lives of men and women alike. With our second to last example, we could take a look at Julie Sweet, the current CEO of Accenture, which is a company based in Dublin, Ireland. It's a global services organization with 500,000 employees and over $45 billion in revenue. And according to Forbes, Julie Sweet represents one of the most powerful women today, largely due to their philanthropic impact and willingness to support women with similar dreams in business as her own. Lastly, it wouldn't make sense to have an ILDECA video exploring influential businesswomen without taking a look at our very own Karen Baer. Serving the chapters of our state for many years, Ms. Baer has made herself a loved and appreciated figure amongst the DECA community, inspiring and guiding both officers and members alike with consistent information, advice, and kindness. I, for one, in the short amount of time I've gotten to know her, have only grown to appreciate all that she does for our organization and community. And we, as members of Illinois DECA, should never forget to thank those like Karen Baer who make our DECA experiences the best they can be, consistently through hard work and dedication. Thus, this marks the end of our exploration of some of the most impactful women in business over time in honor of the end of National Women's History Month. I hope you all enjoyed this different style of video. And if possible, it would be super appreciated if you could like, subscribe, share, or comment on this video to promote it among as many people in our community as possible. I know our audience is small, but I truly believe this can be a medium to help and inform our members greatly. So any sharing would mean the world. Thanks again, Illinois DECA, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.